Yes, ma'am.
Congressman, I just wanted to mention, of the 47 million uninsured, there are 28 million of those uninsured who are self-employed and small business owners who do leave money on the table, who do pay for medical costs to the average of $2,000 to $3,000 a year per person. But my question is, what about this elephant in the room of basically the health insurance industry, who are constantly, raising premiums and that kind of co-pays? How do you feel about that, and how is that going to be reined in?
Well, that's why the health care plan that is designed, if you have health insurance through an insurance company and you're employer-based or even individual, the bill has both the House bill now. The Senate bill is different. The House bill has an individual mandate and an employer mandate with exceptions for small business, and I believe the number was less than $500,000 right now. That number has gone up and down, and that's not in our committee. That's another committee that does that. But so you would still get money through the private sector through the insurance companies. Now, the bill also prohibits them from refusing to take you for pre-existing conditions and lots of other things. That's insurance reform on a national basis.
But there's no insurance. We're not having any tort reform thrown in.
Well, no. Well, I have to admit, most tort reform is on the state level because you file lawsuits in the state court. Well, Texas.
On the national level.
No, Texas has the strongest tort reform in the country. And if you go look at the malpractice lawsuits that are filed. I don't know many of them that are filed in federal court. They're all filed in state court. Let me get this question first. Let me get around the room. Everybody will get a chance. But the private insurance companies will still be there. Now, the 25 million, I've heard lots of different numbers that kicked around. The 8 or 9 million or 10 million, whatever it is, are undocumented. They're not covered by the bill. But everyone else would be. And they expect this bill would cover about 97% of the people in our country. But again, most people would still stay with their employer-based insurance. And and so it would only cover, and it would set up cooperatives. And I have to admit, I'm not a real fan of cooperatives. When I was a state legislator, we tried many times to set up buying cooperatives for small businesses, and it just never worked because you couldn't get insurance companies to participate. But that's part of the national bill. And let me talk about insurance itself. Health insurance, it's typically regulated by the state. If you go down here and buy an individual policy, you're buying one that's regulated by the state of Texas. If you go to an employer that's a multi-state employer, like most of our plants along the channel, you come under federal law. It's called ERISA, literally back from the 70s. And so ExxonMobil doesn't go to the state to get their, or Shell doesn't go to the state to get permission for their health care. They actually come under federal law. So we've always regulated insurance, whether it's the state market or the federal market. The federal market hadn't been as good in some cases as it should be, and so that's what this bill would remedy. Let me get, yes, sir.
I got a two-part question, but I just want to start off with a quick statement.
Hopefully I'll remember the second part as we do the first.
Yeah, I grew up in a very conservative family, but became a radical liberal for many years. And I just want to acknowledge you and most of Congress and the liberals for turning me back to my conservative roots.
Well, wait a minute. Is that the first part? Let me respond to that. Let me tell you, I've been called everything from a conservative and to a liberal. And so, I look at the issues. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, the two-part question I have is this, and I'm not really so much interested in your answer as I am the answer by a show of hands in this room. I think it would be instructive for you if you simply ask this room quickly, how many people in this room right now support any form of the cap and trade, or as we like to call it, the cap and tax bill? If you support it, raise your hand. If you don't support it, raise your hand. Now that's your. These are your bosses speaking to you.
Well,
yeah. Now, I'm curious in this room, how many people, by a show of hands, oppose any form of socialized or government-run health care? These are people who put you in office, sir. We can take you out of office.
Let me ask you, how many of you have Medicare? How many have Medicare? I know I'll get it in 3 years.
They can answer that?
And can I say something? In relation to your question about Medicare, more and more doctors are pulling out of Medicare because the government is cutting back on their compensation and they're not going to practice like that. And that's one of the things
that is something we have to address, because I'll tell you, in our area, and we see it literally from Greens Point to Baytown, we have a lot of, if a doctor practices in our district, and if they don't take Medicare or Medicaid, that's probably 40 or 50% of their practice. And so they almost have to. My worry is that next generation, a doctor who's not going to, when he retires or she retires, we're not going to find a doctor to come out and take that place. We'll end up all having to go to, you know, the Woodlands or someplace else to see a doctor. But,
The thing that concerns me, Congressman, is that it's pretty well demonstrated and proven that, based upon past history, the Medicare business is not in good shape. The government's running it, and it's not in good shape. We've been hearing from, I don't know how many people from Congress, oh, we're going broke, we're going broke, we're going broke. By 2000 and so-and-so, we're going to be out of business.
I think it's 2017.
And now you're telling us that we're not going broke.
Well,
I'm talking about the Medicare.
what I'm saying, and let me get his question for, did you?
Yeah, well,
okay. Now let me talk about Medicare going broke. Medicare, like Social Security, Medicare was created in 1965, and it was never actuarially sound. Neither was Social Security. You don't start a pension plan in 1935 and start paying benefits with being actuarially sound. If we had to live, if Medicare and Social Security had to live under our laws we have for your pensions now, it wouldn't be done. So about 25 years, Congress has to look at Social Security and say, okay, how can we extend that life? Congress did that in 1983. They raised the age of it. When I retire, I have to be 66 instead of 65 to get Social Security. My son, who's 34, will have to be 67. Now, Congress is probably going to look at Social Security again sometime and say, hey, we're all living longer. So we may put the retirement age at 68 or 69 for Social Security. That way you extend the life. The Medicare is different, though, because Medicare never had that trust fund. There's a trust fund for Medicare that we pay into with our Medicare tax. But it's still more is going out than coming in, so that comes out of our tax revenue. What we pay to the IRS every April 15th.
Congressman, one of my biggest complaints for years, and this was back when I was a young man, I was paying Social Security. And Roosevelt set this thing up, but he didn't set it up so that all of our contributions and all of these taxes that we've been paying for Social Security was put in a separate trust that we would operate individually of the government. No, what they do, they take all of our taxes and lump it in with everything else and spend it for everything else.
Now, let me address Social Security.
And then they come back and say, I'm sorry, we're running out of money. Well, now, they're going to do the same thing to us on this national health care takeover. Where they say, we want to spend so much money on medical care this year, and we're going to divide it up 12 months. And when we run out of money, we're going to push your appointments and your surgeries and everything else forward for 6 months or whatever. If you die in the meanwhile, that's just tough. And if we don't feel like it's I remember how the old HMOs worked. You had a whole list with some of these HMO companies that excluded a lot of major medical illnesses. And that's why we had so many lawsuits, and finally the HMO business went kaput, because they were excluding coverage for conditions that people needed treatment for.
Well,
and this thing is going to be the same old junk.
Well, in all honesty, Congress, if there are two of the domestic programs that are the most popular in history. First one was Social Security. And if any member of Congress decided to come up and abolish Social Security, same with Medicare. So Medicare is going to be there no matter who your member of Congress is, because they will make sure it's continued to support seniors. You know, you have to have health care, but anyway, that's obviously Congress is going to have to revisit Medicare, whether it's through this bill, but to extend that life of Medicare, just like we have to extend the life of Social Security. Let me get the lady next to you.
Isn't there reviews programs every 25